Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to find anyone's email address for free inside of clay.com. So without further ado, all we need to start with as an input is the first name, the last name, and the website of the company where you're trying to find the person from. And in this case, you can see I've basically just made up this list, and I quite like some of these guys, so I'm just going to use them as an example. And all you have to do is click on File, Download as a CSV, and import it directly inside of Clay. I'm sure you can get this far. If not, all you have to do inside of Clay is basically click on Actions and Import, and you can then import from CSV file over there and just drag and drop the file right here, and it would look something like this. As soon as you have all of those leads inside of the table, the first thing that we need to do is remove the www dot. And the way we do that is by using formula. And over here, we click on Add Column, we click on Formula, and we say Remove quotation mark, and we can say www dot. Or specifically, we can say if there is a www dot, comma, remove it. Remove it from, and then obviously to highlight the place that we want to remove from, we put backslash and then company domain. Then we click on generate formula, and over here we can see all the cleaned up company domains, because what we're going to try and do today is basically guess everyone's email address. And this is how all the email finders make their money. So all they basically do is they just guess the email addresses using this format. And it's typically first@company.com, last name@company.com, and so on. And we're basically going to replicate this entire process and just literally spend zero money on email verifications afterwards. And I'm going to show you step by step how to get that set up. So essentially what we do first of all is we just need to clean up the domain, which is the first step, which we've just done. And if you know me pretty well right now, you would know that I like to label the columns. So all you have to do is click on the column itself, click on rename column, and say step 1, clean up the domains. Right. By the way, by the end of this video, I'll also share the table wherever you're watching this, so you can literally just spare yourself the trial and error and just copy and paste exactly the template I'm using here. The second step, we're going to try to basically find first a domain.com. So we're going to try to say, let's say tim@b2bboosted.com in this case, right? So all we have to do is go back inside of Clay. We click on Actions, we click on Formula, and if you click on Add Column, Formula, we can then put first at /domain and click on Generate Formula. And at that moment in time, we could see all of this stuff. But obviously, something that we've done wrong here is it should be at clean up the domains part, click on Generate Formula, and it will be, in this case, we have to put first name, right? So first name at this.com, and it should come up with actual legitimate email addresses that look more or less the same. And then we can say, and make the first letter lowercase, right? And then we can launch it again, and let's see what happens. We can see right now this is what the domains look like. At that moment in time, we basically have the first option. So I'm going to say step 2, email, let's say name, first name at domain.com, right? And what we're going to now try and do is to verify this to see if it's a legitimate email. Because, for example, tim@b2bboosted.com is my actual email address, right? So all we have to do for that is go to AppSumo and buy this lifetime deal. And it's not a pyramid scheme. I'm not associated with them in any way, shape, or form. But it's basically a one-time payment of $79 in return for you having unlimited lifetime verifications of emails almost. And the way that it works here, you can see you get 500 new credits every single day for email verifications. And on top of that, you get 100,000 lifetime credits as well. And this is something that you can integrate inside of clay.com. So all you have to do for this is click on Add Enrichments and type in HTTP API. By the way, if you already are more advanced with Clay, obviously watch this on 2x speed. So, I entertain you a bit more. And then you click on that, and then you can basically browse templates and type in the name of this email verifier, which is Rion. And the reason we're using this email verifier and not an email verifier that's provided inside of Clay is because we don't want to spend Clay credits. And if you know me well, I literally don't spend any Clay credits inside of the platform myself. I rely on external providers. And over here, we're basically going to input the first name at domain.com, going to click on Apply Template. And once again, inside of the Clay course that I've just created and launched, you have the setup of every individual tool like this inside of Clay, and it explains step by step how you can get this set up. So if you want to check that out, by all means, check that out. Then you're going to click on Save and run 13 rows in this view. And at that moment in time, what will start happening is, hopefully, we'll start verifying the email addresses to see if this is the right kind of email address. In this case, it's my bad, so ignore this for the time being because my API key was not found because I was trying to hide it from you, but let me copy and paste the API key and this should run smoothly. Now, whenever you run HTTP APIs, if the request was processed fully, then it says 200, and that's the same in all cases. So all you have to do is click on it, and you would see the results of the email. Is it valid or not? And then you can add it as a separate column. So, for example, first verified email 1, and then over here, you will basically come up with, let's say, status. And over here, we can see valid, valid, and a couple of them are invalid. And that's fine, because guess what? We spent literally 0 on this, right? So we're going to now follow the exact same process, otherwise known as a waterfall, whereby if this is the right email address, we don't do anything with it in the meantime. But if it's invalid, then we need to basically go and try the other variations of the email address. For example, firstlast@domain.com. So without further ado, let's get going with this. The next email format that we're going to try is first.last@domain.com. So let's start doing it now. In the meantime, I'm going to rename this column just to say, this column to say email domain. And then finally, we can basically click on add column. We can click on formula. And this time it's going to be first name dot last name at, and then we just basically input the email domain, and we're going to generate the preview for this. And worth noting here, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to try the second variation of the email, which is going to be first.last@domain.com. And in this case, we're basically going to click on add column. We're going to click on formula, and we're going to put in first name dot last name at email domain, and we're going to generate formula. And in this case, one thing that we could be doing wrongly is obviously we don't want to do this for columns that already have a verified email address. So what we're going to say is if this status is not valid, and then we're going to say first name dot last name at email.com. Right? So we're basically, in this case, we're saying if we haven't verified that email address, then let's try the other ones as well. So now we're going to click on output is correct. Hopefully it's correct here. And we can see that the only addresses that we're now trying to find here are only the ones where the first attempt was unsuccessful, right? So in this case, we're going to call this first.last@domain.com, right? And we're going to do the exact same thing all over again, which is HTTP API. Here I'm going to use another provider called Verify Magically, which is another provider that you can use for this. And they are pretty good. That's what I usually use. So over here, we're going to basically verify this email address, apply template, save and run. And it should run these columns. But one thing that I did wrong here is I basically queued it to run the empty cells. So if you want to only run these cells where we're trying to verify the email addresses, we can then say use AI, only run if this contains an at. So basically, we're basically saying don't run the empty rows, right? So it will run all the ones with the output, and then we're going to save and run 13 rows. At that moment in time, is basically now going to run all of these, and let's see the result of these ones. So let's say guess 2 result, create the column, and straight away we can see that all of them are invalid, which is just completely disappointing. And you get the idea. By now, you could probably do this for yourself, and you can go and try the exact same system for trying all the other email variations. Of course, if you want me to handhold you through this, I'm going to shoot this video for another 5 minutes or so. So the next variation that we're going to try is firstlast@domain.com. So let's try and do that. And straight away, we're going to click on actions, and we're going to click on add column. We're going to do formula, and we're going to do first, last at email domain, generate formula. And specifically, we're going to say if email status or the other status. So now what we're trying to basically say is if the other two guesses were unsuccessful, then we're going to try and run this row. So we're going to say only if this verified email or the second guess are not valid, say, and then we're going to say basically output first last name at email.com. So let's try that. And without further ado, you can see over here basically provided us with a bunch of guesses. And then this is probably a bit wrong because we're not supposed to be running every single person. And I basically tweaked it a bit to say, hey, if this first status is not valid, I'll put first last name at email.com and we'll generate the formula. And we can see right now it's only going to run the rows where we haven't guessed the email address yet. So we're going to say output is correct, say formula, and voila, this will basically be first last at domain.com. Or otherwise I might call it guess number 3, just to make it more clear. And once again, we're going to do the exact same process of going HTTP API, and we're going to basically click on My Templates, verify magically, input that, apply template, save and run 13 rows. And once again, if we want to just be a bit more cautious of the kind of like signals that we're sending to it, like the input that we're sending, we can say only run if, let's say, guess 3 contains at, which is in other words, only run if, if there is some sort of output in that. And we're going to save and run, and voila, we should start seeing this being populated. So over here, we can see, once again, depressingly, this email address is invalid. But remember that in this case, we've got another 3 or 4 different variations that we can try as well. So we can add column again, and then we can then keep on going with this. We're going to click on formula, and next up, we're going to try and do first initial, let's try last name at domain.com. I haven't really seen that a lot. And then we're going to wrap up at that point. So let's say first, let's do last name at domain.com. So, but actually, screw it. I mean, for the time being, this is good enough because now at the very end, we're going to click on add column. We're going to click on formula, and we're going to say output, let's say if verified status is valid, output the first guess. If the second status is valid, output the second guess. And then if guess number 3, do we have a guess number 3? Let's see. Basically saying here, if the first email is valid, output that. If the second one is valid, output that. And if the third one is valid, output that, right? And this will be called our master waterfall guest email address. And in this case, we're going to generate formula. Let's see what it comes up with. And we can see out of 13 people, we were able to guess and verify, I think about 10 of them, which is commendable given that this literally cost us 0. And we're no longer going to be ripped off by email finder providers who claim to have a software, whereas all they probably do automatically is just this entire process. So for future context as well, you can run this inside of every single clay table that you build. And the way you would do that is I'm going to share this as a template. And every single time that you have a new table that you want to import it to, you basically copy and paste the entire table, and you would be able to then create a table using template. You will choose what workspace you want to add it to. You will create the table, and voila, you have this exact template that took me forever to build. And the best part is that I'm going to label it for you, so it's really dummy proof, where it says, hey, step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this. You can see I've updated the table. So now we have guest number 1, we have email verification number 1, we have the status of the email verification, and we have the same for the guest number 2, guest number 3, and so on. And if I'm feeling generous, I might even do 6 or 7 guesses. So in total, you'll basically be statistically improbable that you would not be able to find someone's email address. So if you liked this video and if you watched this far, then by all means do check out the Clay course. If you're watching it within the Clay course, hope this makes sense and hopefully this was worthwhile. And on top of that, hopefully you learned formulas by now, because once again, you can see the way that I prompt the formulas, and that's the way you typically do formulas. There are 2 main things, and the main thing to keep in mind, if you want to save operations, you can always click on edit column, And at the very bottom, you can click on Use AI, and over here, you will basically tell it when to run this specific function inside of Clay. So make sure to use this wisely because you're going to save a ton of Clay credits going forward. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, do comment wherever you're watching it, and hopefully you enjoy. All the best in the meantime.